Test. Hello, Think Twice Radio, and welcome to another episode of Austin Audits with myself, Matthew Austin, the Open Data Auditor, also known as Open Data Matt. So, welcome to another episode of my show. Today's episode, we're going to be speaking about the upcoming SaaS Analytics Institute's anniversary, which is this coming Thursday. So, the city's spent $2.2 million on a police analytics contract, and the 2-year anniversary is coming up Thursday of the final payment. So we'll be revisiting and auditing that. I'm going to be speaking a little bit about the petition, which is being circulated by a group called Lola to petition the creation of indebtedness for a new police shooting range in the Broadway Fillmore neighborhood. And also providing my perspectives on the mayor's race, because we had a recent deadline pass. So now we kind of have a little more clarity on the horses in that race, which I think that is probably a good place to start. So, I think first I'll start with, so today is April 7th, and actually 4 days ago on April 3rd was the deadline for candidates for all offices in New York State to file their petition. So, as I kind of made the analogy, the mayor's race, and I'm going to talk specifically about the mayor's race, but this applies to all races. So we had legislature seats open, all sorts of, essentially any race on the ballot in November. The petition deadline was Thursday. So I'm going to focus just on the mayor's race. So I've kind of made the analogy that the mayor's race is like a hockey game of there's 3 periods. So we just ended the first period, which the first period goes from February to March 3rd, the deadline that we just passed. And that was the petition gathering, petitioning period, where candidates were circulating petitions to get onto the ballot for the primary. And in the city, we had specifically, most of the focus is on the Democratic Party line because of the enrollment figures in the city of Buffalo, where there's many more registered Democrats. So that's kind of, at least in the city of Buffalo, has traditionally kind of been the actual election for the mayor. And that's not to say that whoever wins the Democrat, but they're definitely the strong favorites. I think the last mayor's election where Byron Brown ran in a write-in campaign was very unusual, but usually the Democratic primary kind of serves as the actual election. So so April 3rd was the deadline. So we had candidates submit their petition. And there's been kind of a lot of media coverage of all the candidates entering the race and exiting the race. And so now I think we have a little more perspective, at least, the first period has ended. So we at least know the candidates who have submitted petitions. So we had a few candidates that had been kind of in the race that either failed to or didn't turn in any petitions. But so we have some candidates. I think there's reported 7 candidates. So we have Acting Mayor Chris Scanlon, State Senator Sean Ryan, Reuse founder Michael Gaynor, former Fire Commissioner Garnell Whitfield, Acting University Council member Rashid Wyatt, Antoine Tyson Thompson, who I believe is the former communications director for Crystal People Stokes, had entered and submitted petitions. He was kind of a late entry. And then we also had James Payne, who's a community activist, had reached the threshold. And then we also had on the Republican line, James Gardner, who is running as Republican, filed their petition. So those are kind of the candidates in the race. Also, James Gardner filed a petition for the conservative line, and we had Senator Sean Ryan on the Working Families Party line. And those were the candidates who had formally entered in petitions. And we'll see how the race shapes up, because right now we're kind of in this first intermission. Right, so the first period was this petition and gathering. The second period of this race is kind of between now, getting the petition signatures, and the primary season, which is in June. And then the third and final period is between the primary and the general election. So right now, I kind of say we're in this first intermission, where now that candidates have officially submitted their designated petitions, we're in this intermission where, right, there's going to be objections to petitions, and a lot of legal challenges. So kind of, you have this period now, I'll call it an intermission, where you have anyone can file an objection, right? Any city voter, but most of this is delegates or people aligned with certain campaigns will challenge or object to other people's petitions. And the objections could range from anything from, right, you filled out your form wrong, to right, some of your signatures aren't valid because they're not registered voters. It's kind of this period where, and I've seen some coverage that some election lawyers say that New York State's election kind of system is antiquated, and we're in this period now where, right, people get objected to, and we're in this. The way I believe this works is, right, anyone can file an objection, and then candidates will get a hearing with the Board of Elections, and also, right, this could actually get elevated to the lawsuit if it goes there further enough. But I don't think right now we know who has submitted signatures, and I think the Board of Elections, they consider all petitions, if they appear on their face, they have the number of signatures valid. But right now we're in this verification period where, we'll see. So it's coming into focus, and of who the candidates will be on this race. And a kind of a big development that I just saw reported today in the news was actually one of the candidates who gathered enough signatures, James Payne, actually dropped out of the race, and which is kind of peculiar, at least my point of view, right? To go, I think James Payne, who's the community activist, I think, right, the media had reported, obviously he's more complex than just what was reported, but he's kind of reported as one of his family members died in the blizzard, but also, just a community activist, and he had gathered, I think, 2,500 signatures, which is no small feat in itself, but he dropped out, I think, today, and it kind of, the way it was communicated was that, right, the black city leaders or community leaders had kind of are starting to, I don't know if he was pressured, but essentially he dropped out of the race after talking with some of the leaders in the city's African American community, because right, with so many horses in the race, the way it was reported was that some of the black leaders in the city are kind of looking to coalesce behind one candidate, and that's what makes this election really complex, right? This isn't just one person running against another. And I think it's true, right? I think the issue we have now is with so many candidates and very few voters. I think, and actually the Investigative Post had reported that I think 27,000 signatures have been submitted, which is actually would be a high turnout for a primary. So I think some of my projections are right. A well-participated primary would have 40,000 voters in it, but 30,000 might be a more conservative and reasonable estimate. So let's say, right, for example, let's say we do have 8 candidates in this race, or 7 candidates on the Democratic side. If only 30,000 people participated, right, if that's split equally, right, 7 ways, that means the winner could have somewhere between 4,000 to 6,000 votes, which I think, well, I don't know. We'll see who drops out, who gets petitioned, but I do think, right, in a race where there's so many candidates in such a small turnout, the more candidates, right, the less it's going to take to win the election. I do think that the more candidates in the race does favor probably acting Mayor Scanlon the most, and then maybe State Senator Sean Ryan. And I think the reason it favors acting Mayor Scanlon is, right, he has a very supportive coalition, right? He's got maybe the most powerful political base in the city, which is, right, he's operating the machinery of City Hall. So, right, all the union members of all the City Hall workers, right, the police union, the firefighters union, the white collar union, right, all those people vote because their jobs, a lot of it depend on, or their work environment dependent, and right, and that's no joke. So my only worry is that, right, the more candidates in this race, the more that favors, I think, someone like acting Mayor Scanlon, who has a very strong strong power base. And I think you already saw that. I think it was reported that he had over 7,000 signatures. And I know some of his posts on social media said that was because of, support from the community. I suspect it's more because of, the weaponization or the actual machinery of the machine. And I think one of the times last council race, I did some poll observation for one of the candidates in the race. And I actually witnessed the DPIS commissioner, Kathy Amdor, doing poll inspector, let alone some of the council staffers. So actually, that was eye-opening to me to actually see City Hall workers doing poll visibility, and very unclear whether they were taking PTO or whether they were on the clock. But it's definitely something that's going on. I know I saw a couple City Hall staffers doing canvassing on my street. I think 2 days after I know Haley Whitney, who is the executive assistant to the director of OSP and might be getting a promotion to a policy position in OSP. I saw her collecting signatures. All of the exempt employees go out and actually participate in, especially when they're being paid. And yeah, it's no joke. Obviously, you've seen Acting Mayor Scanlon too, also kind of weaponizing the mayor's office of, whether it's being very active in the community, going to all these community groups, or in the case of maybe the police department, actually firing the police commissioner to curry favors with the police union. So I think my concern is that, the more candidates and horses there are on this race, the more that favors kind of the establishment that have a well-established power block. But we'll see how that plays out. So we'll see. I think with James Payne, it's no joke. To actually get 2,500 signatures is a huge deal and a huge amount of effort. So I was very surprised to gather that many signatures and then drop out afterwards. I would have thought maybe if you were having those conversations, you would have dropped out before doing all of that work, because it's no joke. It's a lot of work to get signatures. And plus, his petition wasn't actually objected to. So we'll see. I'm curious if we'll see more kind of consolidation between some of the alternative candidates. Because really, Acting Mayor Scanlon's got a powerful political base, and then alone that he's the son of the former patronage czar for Jimmy Griffin. So he has really the South Buffalo, and South Buffalo is a huge voting block, a very strong power voting block in the city. Then State Senator Sean Ryan, who is the Democratic establishment and the endorsed Democrat, also in the race. He's got the name recognition, a lot of funds in the race too. I was kind of surprised that his signature count was fairly low. I mean, he had 3,500 signatures. So I don't know. I did. He had 35 signatures. So he's a strong. And then kind of the alternate candidates are kind of the incumbents. And I think Antoine Tyson Thompson, I'm the most interested to learn about, because he really just came out publicly and announced his candidacy not more than 2 weeks ago. So we'll see. I don't know if he was gathering signatures beforehand, but that's definitely a horse in the race that now that he's in it, especially as the former communications director for Creasel People Stokes, has some experience. So we'll see kind of, if there's more consolidation, if people get objected to and actually knocked off the ballot legally, or if some of the candidates kind of have conversations. I don't know if they maybe are talking about, future alignments, but we'll see. That's kind of the next step in the race. That was kind of the big deadline. So we'll see kind of how that all plays out, but that's definitely a big deadline. And the first hurdle, the first period is over. We're in this intermission, and soon the second period will start, which will be this actual primary season. The next kind of deadline is the actual, I think it's June 24th primary, is when the actual primary will be. So, get prepped, and I guess we'll see a ramp up in advertisements. I think we'll start seeing some signs, especially now. Right now, it's the real race. Everybody's got a the music has started. Everybody is in the race, whereas before you kind of had some candidates that were maybe not so serious getting in there and getting media coverage. I think James McLeod was kind of the best example of that. Came in, participated in the ECDC debates, and then dropped out before petitioning even gathering started. And it was kind of funny to see the media coverage of his treating that campaign legitimately when the game hadn't even started yet. So we'll see. We have a list of names, and that's kind of the biggest development. So something we'll keep our eye on, but I think that's I think probably the next news that we'll be hearing is actually seeing the objections, and maybe how if maybe some candidates will get knocked off, and maybe some of the objections might get kind of nasty, or maybe they're not. Maybe it'll be clear ceiling. But that's something I'm keeping my eye open on, is who will actually officially be confirmed to be on the ballot, and then we'll start the traditional primary season. And the Democratic primary essentially acts as the general election because of high voter enrollment of Democrats, and yeah, so that's kind of the next season. So I'll keep my eye on it and keep you posted. But that's kind of the first thing to start. And I think so that's kind of the mayor's race. The next thing I wanted to jump into is the actual petition being circulated for the creation of indebtedness. But essentially, I talked about this a little bit last week, but an organization called LOLA, Liberation for One, Liberation for All, they've actually started circulating a petition. And this petition is, it's I've seen it in the media. It's been coverage as they're against this police substation. So actually, the city of Buffalo Common Council in March 18th, passed a $5 million bond resolution for the creation of a new police shooting and training facility on the east side at 379 Paderewski by the Central Terminal. So that's kind of the action, right? The Common Council adopted a $5 million bond, and essentially they're essentially issuing debt to construct a facility. So I think Council Member Nowakowski, the Fillmore Council member, said it's kind of like the city's using their credit card, and essentially that's what it is. They've issued a bond, which is creating more debt to fund the construction of this police shooting training facility. And we really don't have much information about this shooting training facility. There's essentially no documents online about it. There's no permits I've seen, and even the finance committee where this item came before for discussion, the audio feed was very poor, and their normal audio system was down, so you can't actually follow anything that they're saying, which I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that's the reality of it. Is the actual audio from that meeting is not, you can't follow anything they're saying. So really the only thing we have to go on is the actual bond resolution that's been filed by the controller, and now some media reports that have come on. So that's kind of what's happened. And then this group Lola has started circulating a petition, which is a petition to technically to petition the creation of indebtedness. So actually the city charter, which is kind of like the city's constitution, Article 23-11 has it allows any citizens or citizens of the city to petition for the creation of indebtedness, which is technically just the city wants to borrow money. So city residents actually are allowed through the city charter, and the city charter gives them the power to file a petition. So the charter stipulates that the petition must include 10% of the signatures of the registered electorate at the previous general election. And there's about 150,000 registered voters in the city. So essentially, they need about 15,000 signatures. So if Lola if the citizens of the city of Buffalo gather 15,000 signatures, or in this case, I think they're pushing for 17,000, they can actually petition the council for this debt. And then if the petition is successful, that issue or the issue of $5 million bond will go before the electorate at the general election. So that's kind of what's happening. So right now, Lola is circulating a petition, and I encourage anyone to follow them on social media. They've been posting information on their Instagram, and they're actively, collecting petitions, which, I think, as someone that's into data and just knowing the realistic, it's probably highly unlikely that the petition will be successful. As I just said, some of the mayor candidates, just getting 2,000 signatures is extremely difficult, let alone 15,000 signatures. So essentially, you have 30 days to petition and gather 15,000 signatures, which is, it's a steep hill to climb. But I do want to applaud Lola, because I was talking to a friend that, follows a lot of the city, and he doesn't know if this has even been attempted, right? It's in the charter, but have citizens of the city ever attempted to petition the creation of indebtedness? I don't know, but I think, I'm just really optimistic, because I think even if the petition isn't successful, you've mustered up a little bit of political will, a little bit of political courage to actually do it. And I think, it sets a precedent, right? So I think, and one of my concerns is that this bond, and I'll get a little bit into the creation of it, but the bond, really, it was done pretty under the radar, I think intentionally, because they knew this wouldn't be popular. So I think just petitioning this, I think it helps just keep City Hall accountable, right? If council members next time they pass a debt resolution that they think might be unpopular, if there's already been a precedent that, a group might start circulating a petition, it just gives them, may give them pause in thinking through whether they do that or not, which I think is positive. I think, right, there wasn't nearly enough discussion, and especially, right, we have this impending debt crisis where the city potentially has $50 million in debt. So it seems a little kind of financially irresponsible to be issuing $5 million more. But yeah, I think it helps build political willage, let alone future efforts, right? Now with Lola collecting these signatures, right, if they get a couple thousand, now they have a couple thousand names of residents and potential maybe advocates to help build a movement. Because I think specifically with police, right, I think this is just another example of this facility, and it's very unclear, right? As I said, I've been auditing this. I've put several hours of auditing work into it, and I cannot find any documents anywhere online about whether it's site plans, whether it's environmental reviews, permits, really just no information. I think the original facility had been proposed on Seneca Street, and it's just in the bond resolution itself, it says, the city's decided this is in the best interest of the city, but there's no information of how that decision was made. But I think it's just another example. When you think about, right, the city too, just the culture of policing of it. This is very similar to the Bray Miller market of, right, a city-owned property or a large property that the city has an interest in becomes available vacant. And the first thing the city, and the only thing the city considers is, right, how can this building be used for our police department? And not saying, right, I think any civil society needs police, but I think it just kind of speaks to the larger culture of a building comes up, and the first thing and only thing they consider is, right, how this can be used for the police department. And I've been auditing too the facility itself because I'm very concerned. Right, the facility at 379 Paderewski is it was a former community center of the Matt Urban community organization. So it's actually, right, I think there's a couple concerns I have. One, lack of information, lack of vision, imagination, especially with how important this parcel is, right? It's right at the Memorial Circle, right by the Central Terminal. So it's really a premier parcel, especially when you think of all the effort and energy that's now going into the Central Terminal. I think we're finally seeing scaffolds on the Central Terminal, which is the city's historic central train station, which is now being renovated. So it's really important now that, this neighborhood and area is getting a momentum, to use this parcel, which is right there, right on the main circle, right in the heart of the neighborhood, to turn it into a training facility, which is kind of true, right? It's a training facility, but also one of the bonds calls it a shooting range because it's a shooting range training facility. And again, right, we don't have any documents, so we don't know kind of what's planned. But from my understanding, it's a shooting range. And I think some of the media coverage and also some of the coverage you'll see from politicians is that it's a training facility, which I think creates a narrative, right? How can you be against more training for police, right? It makes you seem crazy versus if you frame it as like, this is a shooting range, right? It's much harder to support a shooting range than it is a training facility. So, that's kind of one of my concerns. My other concern too that I've been auditing is the actual building is in an N3R zone, which is a residential zone, which, it's a residential neighborhood. The property is zoned residential, and an N3R zone, a public safety facility. So right now it's zoned in a residential neighborhood, and its use is zoned for a civic social organization. And obviously this training shooting facility, I don't think it is a civic or social organization unless, I don't know, are residents of the neighborhood going to be allowed to use the facility and shoot their own guns in it? I doubt that, right? So after looking at the city's green code, it seems like it will have to be, it's a public safety facility. And public safety facilities are allowed in residential zones according to the city's green code. The issue is that it needs a special use permit. So it's not fully compatible, but in order to have a public safety facility in a residential zone, you need a special use permit. And also something I've been auditing, right? I've searched for permits. I've gone on the open data portal, looking at the permit data set to see if any permits, not just special use, but construction permits, because there's also some rumors that they've also already began construction on the facility. And there's actually an RFP that was issued for, I think it was furniture like couches and TV screens, and audio visual equipment for the facility. So we'll set that aside, but there's some concerns that perhaps construction has already begun on the facility. But yeah, it needs a special use permit, and I cannot find any information online that shows that the Department of Permit and Inspections has issued a special use permit, which is concerning because, right, if the city's issuing this bond before the proper permits, it potentially, subjugates the city to potential issues down the line, and it's something I'm totally going to try to do, is to try to shut down. Right, if it needs a special use permit, I'm going to do my best to cover it and make sure people know when that permit's coming in front of the planning board, because essentially the planning board and the zoning board of appeals, one of those entities, will need to issue a special use permit. So I think, right, it's kind of feels rushed for the city to issue a bond before the permitting has been approved. But that's down the line, and I think I actually did comment that because I think somebody had posted about the Lowell petition on Reddit, the Buffalo subreddit, and one of the users there, I think her name was like Ladybug3782 or something, had actually pointed out that cities are allowed to bypass their own zoning codes. So they pointed out to this, so that got me curious. I didn't know they could do that, but essentially there's this law case. And I'm not a lawyer, but I'll do my best to summarize, the one-page summary that I read. There's a lawsuit called something that was around the County of Monroe versus the City of Rochester. And essentially that case helped set some precedent that actually, cities and municipalities can bypass their own zoning code. But they can't just do that at a whim and however they feel like. That lawsuit actually found that there has to be a balancing test. So there's 9 factors they have to consider when considering whether they can violate their own or bypass their own zoning codes. I don't know off the top of my head what those 9 factors are, but essentially the municipality needs to conduct a balancing test in order to do that. And then I think the case law that I had read said that a later decision then said that it's in the best interest that a public board needs to hold a meeting to gather public input on whether those 9 factors apply in the balancing test. And I think the Ladybug Reddit user had said that they didn't know if any municipality had ever been found guilty, but right, with how inept and incompetent City Hall is, I think Buffalo might be able to set the precedent because, right, after doing some auditing, I don't believe that the city ever did a balancing test. I mean, maybe they did, but I don't believe that they held any public meeting to do that balancing test. So something down the road, I think that potentially a lawsuit or some sort of citizen group could challenge is the actual, right, the issuing of the special use permit, and that it doesn't fit the balancing test, and that, right, especially when and some of the media coverage I've seen is that just a police training facility, but actually, right, I think the angle I'd love to see it reported is this is a police shooting facility in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And I think, right, a shooting facility in a residential neighborhood, I think that doesn't pass the common sense test. And I don't think if it was framed that way, which I'd love to see in the media, and I don't know, I think it framed that way is much more controversial and maybe more truthful to what it is than, just a training facility. Because, a shooting facility really doesn't have any place in a residential neighborhood. Especially, I think you saw some of the media coverage where the council member Nowakowski and a block club leader there essentially said that the community supports it, which I don't know how true that is because I've been doing some auditing of, I think New York State actually did a neighborhood plan for Broadway Fillmore. I think they called it a DRI, or Downtown Reinvestment Initiative or something, or a DRI plan, where they essentially planned out the neighborhood. And then also the Central Terminal Association. So actually the Central Terminal organization that owns and operates that building did a master plan of that neighborhood. And in those kind of very robust planning efforts, the Mad Urban facility, or that parcel at 379, was zoned, and it was planned for arts and culture and also health and wellness. But that was obviously when the facility was a community center. So I can't find any documentation of any plan that's been done recently where, right, this parcel was identified as a shooting range for the police. And I think, right, my perspective is that even the idea that the council member is now saying that this community supports this, that's much different than the community asked for this. So what I believe probably happened here is that this building became vacant, and I think the city police department, because they essentially run the city, they identify that they want that building to be their shooting range. So kind of my perception of what I believe happened is it was this top down of the police see this building, want it for shooting range. Now we need to go find the community and get them on board with it. Which, right, even just targeting, a block club, and getting their support for it. And we don't know about how they came to that decision if they support it, because I think it was even Channel 2 or Channel 4, they did report it, and they said that the public meeting or the block club meeting went well, but they weren't allowed in the room. So we have very little information on who supports it, how they came to that decision to support it, right? Was this a top-down, this is what we're doing, we need you to support it, do you have concerns? And I really doubt this was hey, this building's vacant, the city's rethinking what it could be, here's a palette of options, which ones do you want? Oh, you want the shooting range. I think it's much more likely that it was dictated to the community that they're going to get a shooting range, how can we get you to support this? Which is very similar to kind of what went on with the Kensington, of you had a state agency kind of write a top-down plan for a building or infrastructure. There's lots of similarities here too, because also I believe it's unclear. Did the cops are the police violating the law, or did the controller lie, or maybe a little both of this? Because in the comptroller's bond resolution, they stated that a seeker review has been conducted and a decision has been rendered. But I've foiled for this, and I've been speaking with people. I've just been asking around. Hey, do you know if anything? Any seeker studies or state environmental quality review actions, decisions, studies were done. And to yet, I've yet to find a single person, whether it's the council member, the police deputy commissioner, the Office of Strategic Planning, who I foiled. I have yet to find anyone that says, a seeker assessment was done. So kind of my auditing senses are going off, and I'm operating as if no seeker study was done, and because there's nothing, I haven't found anything online posted about it. The Office of Strategic Planning says that they post their seeker studies on the state's environmental bulletin board, and I have not. I looked on the environmental bulletin board and did not see anything. And there's no information on their website, and I've searched 379 Paderewski seeker on Google, and I can't find any information. So I've foiled the Office of Strategic Planning for the seeker documents for 379 Paderewski and the proposed shooting training facility. And we'll see. They have 30 days to respond. We're in this period, but it's looking more and more like no seeker study was done. So one, this brings up to questions, right? And let's I think my perceptions are either that the seeker was done, it was done improperly, or the seeker was not done at all. So I guess I'll kind of iterate on maybe what I thought. If they did do it, I think what they probably did is they probably classified it as a type 2, which is a type 2 means it needs no further study. But I think that the project doesn't fall under type 2, and I'm not a seeker lawyer, so I could be wrong. But because the nature of the building is fundamentally changing, right? It's being changed from a civic social organization to a shooting range or a public safety facility. Because even though you're rehabilitating a building that's there, and we don't know, right? Because there's no documents online. Is it a demo and reconstruction? Is it a rehabilitation? Is it a rehabilitation with a new addition on the back? We have no information. There's no documents online. But let's say that they're just rehabilitating the structure as it is and returning it. I think because they're fundamentally changing the use of the facility, that a type 2 doesn't apply. So that's what I think if they did do it, that they're trying to do it. But I have suspicions, and I believe they probably didn't do a seeker study, which brings into question, right? Are the police breaking the law? Because if they're building the facility without doing seeker, that's a violation of New York State environmental quality review. So the police would be breaking the law, which is concerning. But then also, right, that the fact that the comptroller brought a resolution to the council, in that bond resolution that the comptroller filed says that a seeker study has been completed and the determination has been made. So if they stated that and that never happened, that means the comptroller is lying, which is also concerning. Because one, we have the police potentially breaking the law, and then we have two, the comptroller, who Barbara Miller-Williams is a former police officer, is then either ignorant or is being untruthful and is lying about a seeker. Because if a seeker was not done and they put in the bond resolution that it was, and the determination was done. If that statement's factual, that's a lie. So it's something I'm auditing, and we'll see. It's interesting because yeah, if the police broke the law and the comptroller's lying, yeah, that's concerning on multiple factors. So we'll see. I'm optimistic, or obviously being audited, I'll keep my eyes open until it's proven. This is just suspicion at this point, but I have not seen anything that would support the facts that seeker was done, and yeah, which is concerning. Which is, again, coming back to the Kensington, the same thing the state did, which right, a top-down project that they bypassed environmental laws to kind of usher a study through. And I think, especially with seeker, right, New York State has a broad definition of the environment, so it's not just, right, will this site produce pollution, but actually I think one of the thing that's coming through just in the reporting is, right, if you put a shooting range in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and it is concerning because when you actually look at the building itself, there's literally a residential building like 2 feet. So somebody's house is 2 feet from the building. So obviously the one concern that I think, common sense would dictate is noise. And actual noise is something that would have to be studied in seeker, right? Is noise that's damaging the environment? Is this facility going to be creating noise? And how would you remedy that? So yeah, that's the that's a little background. The other point too that I'd love to see that I've seen Councilmember Nowakowski and the Block Club president say is that the community supports this. And even just the media coverage, and something I've noticed in media coverage is, I don't know if it's just media training and right, how the legacy media operates, but they try to turn everything into a battle of this team versus this team, right? Opposition battling two sides against each other, right? It was something we saw with the Kensington of they're trying to pit, right, broadcast it as, right, community groups fighting each other. In this case, the way the media portrayed this incident was that, right, this is the community, the East Side neighborhood, the Broadway Fillmore, that are supporting the project, and you have these outsiders that are against the project, and they're battling each other for the future of the neighborhood. Which maybe there's some truth to that, but I think, right, one, and I already touched on, right, does the community really support this, or did they just kind of co-opt one block club into supporting the police department's plan? So that's a whole other issue. But the other issue of why it's not just a neighborhood issue is once the Common Council issues a bond, so $5 million of debt, that $5 million of debt is, right, that's the liability of all city taxpayers. So the moment that the council issues a $5 million bond, you're then making a citywide issue because you're asking all city taxpayers to pay for it. And especially Fillmore, Councilmember Nowakowski was then said he refused to have, his constituents spoken over. But the issue is that he represents a very gerrymandered area, for being frank. But yeah, the Fillmore area wraps around all the way to Allentown and some of the west side. And those people too, if this is a district and this district was drawn because it's a compact area, those people's opinions are valid. So not just a district issue, but also a citywide issue of just because it's being built by the terminal, right? Residents in South Buffalo, residents in Riverside and Black Rock, University Heights, all city taxpayers have to pay for this. So it's a citywide issue at that point, which is, yeah. And then also, right, the council member was also calling this like some frivolous online petition, which is a very ignorant thing to say because it's not just an online petition. This is actually a petition that's authorized by Section 23-11 of the city charter. So it's actually the city charter gives residents the rights to petition the creation of indebtedness. And that's what this petition is. It's not, while the group is against the facility, they're not technically petitioning the facility. They're petitioning the creation of indebtedness, and that indebtedness is being used to fund the facility. So we'll see. So that's kind of the high-level overview of that project, and that's obviously it's moving, and we'll see. Lola has, I believe, 30 days to gather signatures, and right, even if it fails, and who knows, I think there's still steam to gain. They could get the signatures, but it's helps build that political courage and political will, which is something that I think this city just needs. We need more civic participation, and we'll see. It's something I'll continue to cover, but that's just something I wanted to cover, the current situation. So I'll keep everyone abreast of that, but I think it's something I'm very passionate about. I consider that my neighborhood, right? I'm a Fillmore District resident. I've been a tenant in that neighborhood. I've spent a lot of time over in Broadway Fillmore. And I do consider that kind of my neighborhood. And yeah, I am firmly against them putting a shooting facility in a residential neighborhood, especially there with the neighborhood finally getting some momentum. Another thing is I think there's a mural of, I think, John Lewis, who is a civil rights activist. And one Reddit user had a good kind of like, that's pretty dark, right? That you have this civil rights activist whose mural is painted on a building that now they want to be a shooting range. So I think that's something I'm going to get a little deeper into who that civil rights expert is, and yeah, coverage. But yeah, that's the shooting range facility, and I'll keep you abreast. But I encourage everyone to follow Lola on Instagram, and if you can, they're holding a police town hall about the resolution on Saturday, and also they're circulating petitions. So I have a petition. Yeah, I encourage you, if you're against the creation of indebtedness, to sign a petition and to exercise your rights as a resident of the city. We have a comment here from Streamboo. I can't read it, but yeah, thanks for tuning in and commenting. So, kind of in the third period of the show, I wanted to turn to the SaaS Analytics contract. So, April 10th. So on Thursday, it's the 2-year anniversary of the City of Buffalo's final payment to the SAS Institute. So, what's the SAS Institute? So, during the summer of George Floyd, right, you'll remember we had police protests all across the country, and the City of Buffalo adopted a resolution which was called the Buffalo Police Reform Agenda, and it was really this movement to reform the police department because the police department needs a lot of reform. So there's lots of pressure there. And in the Buffalo Police Reform Agenda, there was a number of things in that police reform agenda. And one of the things that that was in there was the SAS Institute. So as part of data transparency, so number 10 of the Buffalo Police Reform Agenda was the SAS Institute. So the City of Buffalo hired the SAS Institute to do an analytics contract for the police department. And the resolution stated that the SAS Institute would help position the Buffalo Police Department as one of the most innovative and transparent police departments in the country. And this Thursday, April 10th, is the 2-year anniversary of the city's final payment of the $2.2 million. And I've done some reporting on this in the past, but essentially here we are 2 years later and no information has been made public for the SAS Institute. So I don't know. So yeah, you saw the acting mayor right in March come out with this huge initiative. He announced it in his State of the City for the creation of an Office of Innovation, and this just has echoes of a previous State of the City. So actually, a few years ago, I think it was 2001 or 2002, when Mayor Byron Brown had a State of the City, he announced same branding, innovation. The City of Buffalo is entering into this contract with the SAS Institute to do innovation, to make the police department transparent, to do innovative. And is this history repeating itself? Because actually, right, the city's current chief innovation officer is Kirk McLean. And who is Kirk McLean? So Kirk McLean was the project manager for the city's SAS Institute contract. So I kind of think it brings into questions, right? What was the output or what was the result of the SAS Institute contract? Because the city's project manager, Kirk McLean, ended up getting this promotion to the chief innovation officer title. And I know I'm curious, was that, some sort of kickback for his participation in the SAS Institute? But we don't know because the results of the SAS Institute were never made public. Even though when the item came before the city's finance commissioner, a representative from the Office of Strategic Planning said that, yes, indeed, results of the SAS Institute would be made public. There was also some discussion of a data analytics center in the city that city residents could get training on. And neither of those, right, the results or a data analytics center have been made public, and we don't know, right? The city made $2.2 million in payments, but we have no public results from this innovation or SAS analytics effort. And I think it just brings into question, right? Why weren't results of the SAS Institute ever made public? I know one of the products that was developed out of there was an actual use of force dashboard for the police department. So it just brings into questions, especially with this new initiative to have an Office of Innovation, especially with the Chief Innovation Officer now being in the mayor's cabinet. It just brings into questions, right? Is our city's Chief Innovation Officer equipped to do innovation? And if so, what does he mean by innovation, right? If the SAS Institute is innovation in his point of view, what does that mean for the future of this new Office of Innovation? Are we going to see more innovative ways to steal taxpayer money and to not have any transparency, especially with the current regime's kind of focus on generating revenues? It's just concerning that, right, in order for the city to operate open and transparently, to have somebody in that Chief Innovation Officer title who has a history of not being transparent. And I believe that Kirk McLean was also responsible for writing the RFP, and really there's a smart cities kind of white paper that was written to help get more innovation efforts like the SAS Institute. So I think it just brings into question the track record of the city's current Chief Innovation Officer, and then if the results of that were not made public, what other innovation efforts are going to be developed that will never be made public too. So I really hope that the Common Council will consider calling the city's Chief Innovation Officer to the April 17th Police Oversight Committee, because it's been 2 years now from the final payment of City of Buffalo taxpayer dollars to the SAS Institute, and no results have been made public. It just brings into question, especially as we face this fiscal crisis where the police department seem to get unlimited resources for pet projects, whether it's this analytics contract with the SAS Institute, whether it's a new shooting range in a residential neighborhood, whether it's turning a grocery store into a new police station, right? I think there's a quote, with great power comes a great responsibility. And if the police department gets the majority and lion's shares of city taxpayer dollars, I don't think it's too much to ask for real transparency and openness of what exactly are we getting for our taxpayer dollars. And just very concerned that with the Chief Innovation Officer Kirk McLean's quite frankly troubled history of supporting and then potentially getting a kickback in the form of a promotion from work that has no identifiable outputs or benefits to taxpayers and residents, especially residents that are some of the poorest in the country. It's just concerning that, if that's the track record, what does that mean for the future of our city? And I think that's just something I'd love to parse out for people, is that when you hear City Hall and the acting mayor and the Chief Innovation Officer, they talk about innovation. While they're saying the word innovation, they don't necessarily mean, what the normal people like you and I think of when we think of innovation, right? When we think of innovation, we think of, using technology to make things more efficient, to deliver better services, to improve quality of life of residents, right? And to do things differently and creatively. But when the city says innovation, and when the city's Chief Innovation Officer innovation, this essentially mean more innovative ways to take taxpayer money and to kind of promote themselves and give themselves kickbacks and promotions. And it's just concerning because especially there is a need, right? There is a need to do true innovation, to actually do more with less. And I'm just concerned that the current personnel within City Hall and the administration just don't have one, the competencies to do true innovation, and two, just the courage. I think there's just a lack of courage within the city's innovation department, and yeah, it's just concerning because I think right, it sounds good on its face, but really, when the city hall and when the city's chief innovation officer, when they say innovation, they don't mean true, open, honest innovation. They just mean Bloomberg innovation, which is, I think the city's chief innovation officer was groomed under, the Michael Bloomberg School of Innovation. And I did see a recent post at the Bloomberg Institute, which essentially this arm of like Mayor Bloomberg, who's like a billionaire, like funds these innovation efforts across City Hall. And I don't know if it's a way to like peddle political influence, but I think the Bloomberg Institute was like, they issued a position which was called like an I-team lead for the city of Buffalo. So it just makes you concerned, right? Just the relationship that the Innovation Office has with, these apparent corrupt organizations like the SAS Institute or, right, Mayor Bloomberg's innovation. The idea that we might have, right, an employee hired by the Bloomberg Institute to be running innovation experiments on the city of Buffalo residents is concerning. So I really hope the Common Council will take this seriously, because it's the 2-year anniversary of the final payment of $2.2 million to an unaccountable organization called the SAS Institute. And I know I have this saying called the rise of fascism, because I think, especially with this growing movement, right, of people fighting, a rise of fascism within kind of the corporate takeover of our organization. But I think it doesn't get enough attention that we're fighting a form of fascism, or what I call sashism, right here in City Hall, in City Buffalo. You have this apparent, right, the SAS Institute was essentially, it appears they were able to scheme and scam taxpayers out of $2.2 million. And it's very unclear, one, what taxpayers got for $2.2 million, if the police department is any more innovative or transparent than when those $2.2 million was spent. And one, what is the role that the city's current innovation administration played in, one, seeking out the SAS Institute, and then one appears to have covered the tracks of the SAS Institute, because the only information that's been made public from the SAS Institute is actually a FOIL that I sent to the city's chief innovation officer. And the city's chief innovation officer, I think I asked for some of the data of the use of force dashboard, and it appears that the city's chief innovation officer, either through incompetence or malice, took a CSV or an Excel file and like gerrymandered it into like a 2,000-page JSON file. So they really kind of took this machine-readable data and intentionally made it less transparent than its original form. And that's the only information. I did file an item where I made that information public of the actual raw data set provided by the chief innovation officer. But yeah, that's the only information that's been made public. Even though OSP and MIS department and Daryl Springer also has some responsibility in this whole SAS scam, because he was the one that signed the SAS Institute contract. It's very unclear, the results of that. And I think it's time, especially with this new administration, to get some openness and transparency to the city's finances, but also the police department of, right, what did some of that data that the SAS Institute look at? What did it say? So I'm hoping that the Common Council will take up that item at the upcoming police oversight meeting on the 17th. Although I'm not, right, I'm a realist and not optimistic that will actually happen. But I think, it's time that we get innovation, true innovation, not Bloomberg innovation, and get true openness and transparency into the operations of the city's finances and also City Hall. So I'm hoping that the chief innovation officer will appear before the police oversight committee and finally make results of the SAS police reform agenda project, make it public, because that's what was promised to people, and ultimately that was our taxpayer dollars, and those are our results, not right. The taxpayer dollars aren't supposed to be used to help enrich the city's patronage class, which is apparently short of any other information, appears to what happened there. So that's that. Now with 5 minutes, I wanted to talk a little bit about sports because I think we had a big thing that recently happened. So Alexander Ovechkin, who's a winger for the Washington Capitals, he set a new NHL goal record. So he recently scored his 895th goal, breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time goals record. And yeah, to say this is a big deal is putting it lightly. It was long thought that Wayne Gretzky's goal record would never be touched, and it's for a long time it seemed untouchable. One because right, the era that Gretzky played in, which was the 70s and 80s, was dominated by offense. I think you had right, the modern just goaltending style. Right, goalies now are bigger, they're more efficient. They all have kind of very refined professional technique. The equipment's better. And yeah, just the whole game's changed fundamentally, where the game's way less high scoring. Especially you saw this in the late 90s and early 2000s, where it was really grab and clutch era. And just, yeah, 895 goals is a lot. So I think it was always thought that no one would ever come close to touching this record, just because, one, it's Wayne Gretzky, right? He holds all the records, but also just because the game had changed so much and actually less goals are scored, the idea that somebody could get 895 was untouchable. But yeah, Alexander Ovechkin did it, and it's really incredible. And I think, right, I think people like, the only record I can really think that's comparable is like the baseball home run record. And I think a lot of people kind of know, yeah, baseball home runs, but the NHL goals record is very similar. It's really an outstanding accomplishment, especially this season, where Alex Ovechkin is number 3 in the NHL in goals. He has over 40 goals, and he's, I think, 39 years old, which is like an all-time record for a 39-year-old. Let alone the fact that earlier this year, Ovechkin actually broke his leg, missed 16 games, and then came back and just kept up where he was. So the whole idea that you broke your leg within the middle of the season at 39 years old and just are now playing at this like a 50 goal plus pace is really it's incredible. And I don't know if maybe the non-hockey people really understand how really obscene it is that this record was broken. But yeah, Ovechkin did it, and he's really been a goal scoring machine his whole career. I don't think he's ever scored less than 30 goals in a year. And yeah, he's 39, so he's been doing this his whole career. And I think the other thing that's incredible is just right, Ovechkin, he's actually missed like 2.5 years. He missed, his whole rookie year. He was drafted and missed his whole rookie year because the whole NHL season was canceled due to a lockout. Then you had another lockout where half the year was missed. Then you had the COVID year. So there's like really 2 seasons of hockey that Ovechkin missed, let alone, right, the fact that you have to be healthy that long run. And I think it's, right, something that we can always wonder about now is what if Ovechkin, right, had played his rookie year. I think his rookie year he had 51 goals. So, right, even if he had played his rookie year and say he scored only 40 goals, and plus the lockout shortened year and the COVID year, I mean, it's not unthinkable that there's an extra 100 goals there that potentially would have been scored. So I think the next big milestone is, right, 5 goals from now, he'll be 900, so he'll be the first player to ever score 900 goals. And then maybe the stretch goals, right? Can he get to 1,000 goals? That would be, it seems, I don't know, he seems timeless, and it seems really ridiculous. I mean, he's approaching Tom Brady territory here, where he's approaching 40 years old, and he's still keeping up this absurd pace. I mean, he's number 3 in the NHL right now in goals, and would be number 2 if it wasn't for that broken leg that he incurred in the middle of the year. So it's really, I don't know, he should be studied because it's really incredible, and it's kudos to Ovechkin for just this amazing accomplishment. As a hockey fan, it's really, I don't know, will we ever see it again? I don't know. We'll see when he can get to, but it's really really an astounding accomplishment, and all kudos to him. And yeah, also Wayne Gretzky. All right, he's the great one for a reason. I mean, his all-time points record is, I'm very confident saying that will never be touched. I think he has 2,700 points when. But yeah, now he's number 2 in goals, and I think the biggest thing that was present of that was just how respectful he was, and how much he seemed like he genuinely was supporting Ovechkin. Right, it's got to hurt a little bit to have your record broken, but he did kind of say that when he broke the record, Gordie Howe was very respectful, and he promised his dad and Gordie Howe that if someone broke his record, he'd be the same treatment. So I think it was just an awesome kind of passing of the baton, and also just seeing just the respect that, and just I think they were both right of just saying how big this is for the game of hockey. To have this all-time goals record broken, it's an incredible accomplishment. And really, Ovechkin and even just Crosby. Ovechkin and Crosby came into the league and kind of ushered in the post-lockout era. So they're kind of two icons of this generation, and it's just really incredible to see how much they've helped grow the games. I think there's a stat that, just hockey enrollments in Washington, D.C. have gone up 130% or something just in Ovechkin's career. So kudos to Ovechkin and to the Capitals, and the great one too for just, showing great sportsmanship and just, the passing the baton to the new generation. So we'll see what Ovechkin ends up for, and I'm curious, can he get to 900? And if he got to 1,000 goals, that would really be incredible. But we'll see. So shout out to Ovechkin for the all-time goals record, and that's the end of the show. So thanks for tuning in. Until next time, this is Austin Audits. Auditor out.